Welcome to Season 5 of Fulfilling Career Happy Life. I'm your host, Randi Roberts, Executive and Career Life Coach. This season, we're exploring one of the most misunderstood capabilities in leadership, courage. Not the dramatic kind, but the everyday courage to step into discomfort, speak up when it matters, make hard calls, and lead forward even when the path isn't clear. You'll hear from executives and coaches sharing real moments that tested them and shaped their careers. My hope is that each conversation invites you to reflect on your own relationship with courage, where it's serving you, and where a braver step may be just ahead. So let's get started. Hi, and welcome to Fulfilling Career Happy Life. I am really excited about my guest today. Jolea Payne is a colleague of mine and a friend, and she's someone that I thought about immediately when I thought about leadership courage, based on her background and the work that she does. Jolea had a background. Her first act was about 20 years in the nonprofit space. She was a community organizer. She was in development and operations. She was program director, doing a lot of really hard, really important work. And like many of us, took her first act and turned it into a really powerful second act, which is coaching and I believe consulting as well, Jolea, in the nonprofit world. So what Jolea does now is her coaching business is around supporting Black women and women of culture who are leading social change. And many times they're in the nonprofit world, but also other aspects of leading social change. And this is the reason that Jolea came to mind for me regarding leadership courage, was because the people that she helps have to summon a lot of courage to do really good, really important work that they are not doing for the money, because some of our most important work doesn't get compensated that way. And these are my words, not Jolea's. In a lot of ways, they're having to fix things that others of us have, problems that others of us have created. So it takes courage for that. And I'm really excited to welcome you today, Jolea, and really happy that you're on the show and spending some time with me.
Of course, Randy. I love your work. I love you. I just am so excited to be here and feel very honored that you thought of me for leadership courage, and thought of me as a guest for this season. And so I'm excited to sort of dive into this conversation, um, yeah, about leadership courage. And I couldn't agree with you more. A lot of times my clients are working to fix problems that they did not create, right? That were created in by a system that many of them have personally experienced, and that's how they sort of end up in the work. So,
Yeah. Is there anything about your background that I missed that you want to share before we dive in?
no, you mentioned that I've been in nonprofit for 20 years. I'm also a mother of two beautiful, brilliant Black boys. I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, and I am a sister friend to many. And so I'm also still a community volunteer. I serve on the board of Bayou City Waterkeeper, which is an environmental justice organization here in Houston, where I live. And yeah, those, are I love 90s R&B. And
Thank you for rounding out the other parts of your life because they're so relevant to the topic. I'm glad
yeah.
that you did. Okay, so diving into the topic of leadership courage, tell me how you define that. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. I think, leadership courage is doing the things that others may not have the experience, the knowledge, the capability to do in the face of, challenges that are either sometimes that are either external or sometimes even internal, which is a lot of what I do with my clients. I am a healing centered coach, and a lot of the challenges that my clients face tend to be a lot of internal tensions. And
Yeah.
so the limiting beliefs, the stories that they tell themselves, as a result of being, in toxic workplaces, as a result of working in oppressive systems, in and under oppressive systems, growing up in and under oppressive systems. They have limiting beliefs and narratives that they've told themselves over time that require courage to overcome,
Yeah.
right? So I believe that leadership courage is doing those things in spite of, right? Doing
Yeah.
the things that you know to be right and true and compassionate and loving in the face of all of those external and internal pressures.
Thank you. I It occurs to me that a couple of things when you said that was um, one of the things you listed that it was uh, doing the thing in that others don't have capabilities or that kind of thing to do. And that's true. But I think also they don't have the willingness to do it necessarily or the focus for that. And that sounds really judgy. And maybe it is because I have such a bias towards people that do this work.
Mhm.
But that's one thing that occurs to me is it's the willingness too. Something else that you said that I think is really important, which is sometimes it's a toxic work environment that may lead to that need for healing, but it could also be a system that we were raised in. So much of how we react to these things is from our childhood. It's from
Yeah.
that really fundamental age. And in that way, even I, as a, executive and career coach, really get into some deep stuff because that's true for my folks as well. How
Yeah.
does it show up in the people that you coach mostly? Like, when do you notice that it's there or not there?
The courage or
Courage, yes.
oh, okay. Um, I think that people who come to me, private clients particularly, that come to me and say, I just need some help getting unstuck. I just need a place to talk this through. I just need a thought partner. I think that in and of itself um, demonstrates some level of courage to be able to say, there's a gap here for me, and I need some support in closing the gap, getting over the gap, getting through the gap, whatever that is. But I know that I need some support in doing that. That to me, and it's in and of itself, takes courage. Basically, at the end of it is being able to say, I need some help.
Yeah.
Takes courage to
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
And it's interesting because people who are in a any kind of a public or visible role, which many of your clients are, sometimes that's a time where they feel like they put pressure on themselves to have all the answers and to know what they're doing and to look good doing it, look on top of it. And that may make it even harder for them to ask for help. So it really does require courage.
Oh, yeah. And that is especially true for Black women and women of color who, again, have grown up in this system where they've been socialized to believe that you have to do twice as much for at least half of the result, right? Or as much. So, I do think that, especially to your point, especially women that are in the forefront, right, leading in some sort of way, which is a lot of my clients, it can be a challenge for them to come to ask for that help because, a very sort of significant trope and stereotype in the Black community is that of the superwoman, right? The Black women, we wear these capes, and only within recent years are we really starting to like interrogate these capes and their harm to us and our health. But really, for a long time, people in the community, in our families, in our churches, in our workspaces see us as the fixer, the problem solver. People in fact, there are research studies that show people bring in Black women to lead and fix large problems and then sort of leave them out, hanging them out to dry and leave them out by themselves. Yeah, there's research. I can
I've
send
not seen it. Wow.
yeah, I can send it to you. But that's it can be a challenge when you're holding all of that to then say, and I need help. There's a lot that you have to sort of break through. There's a lot of there's a lot that you have to tear down and talk through to be able to say, I can no longer carry all of this. I cannot wear the cape and not to replace that with shame because you can't, right? So it's also just this awareness that you don't have to be ashamed to ask for help. There is no shame in taking off the cape, but that's work that you got to do to get to that point.
Yeah. I- I- It's, I think bringing up shame is really relevant here because in some ways, maybe it takes courage to get past that. Because a conversation that I have a lot with clients is not, oh, I wish I had done something, I should have done this thing when, I had a tough meeting with my team or my boss or whatever. And rather than try and look back on should, I really work with folks to look ahead to how do you want to handle this the next time you're faced with it?
Mm.
Because it takes the shame out and it gets you moving forward in a different way with different energy and moving towards something instead of moving away from something. And it seems to me that whole cape may put that pressure on you and, you know, people people around you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's the hardest part is just getting to the point where you can shed the cape, where you can
Yeah.
shed the paper, burn the cape. Dr. Raquel Martin is a licensed professional therapist, and I follow her on Instagram, and she has this movement now of burn the cape, like just burn the whole damn thing because it is not serving us in any sort of way.
Yeah.
And the next step, once you shed the cape and burn it, is overcoming the shame that, or overcoming the, um, it's a shame, but it's sort of just sort of manufactured. It's not a shame that we need to be carrying. It's a shame that we tell ourselves as a result of I'm no longer wearing this cape and doing all of the things. I'm no longer the person that you can always come to fix all of the problems and to bear your burdens, right? There, it really should be more of a power that comes that you're stepping into a power when you do that. But again, that takes work to get to that point because when you've been carrying it for so long, it becomes a part of your identity, right? Of
And
who.
it's a good thing. You're helping people in the world. So it must be hard to take that off.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it is hard to take it off, but it's also just a matter of understanding that you're worthy and valuable without the cape, right? And so, um, a lot of times there is a fear of removing the cape because what does that mean for who I am
Hmm.
or how I'm needed in the world, how I'm perceived now by my family and community, people who have relied on me up till now. What does all of that mean? And does it mean that I am no longer capable? Does it mean that I am limited? And at the end of the day, yes, we are, right? Like we all are limited in what we can do, in what we can offer, right? Like there is a point where you cannot do anymore.
Yeah, sure.
We're all sort of limited, and I don't mean like not like incapable, but there's a point where we can do no more,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, I think that a lot of times there's sort of this um acknowledgement of like I can't do anymore. And what does that really mean? Does that mean that I'm incapable? No, it doesn't. It just means that you can't.
Hmm. Yeah. All
You've done
these
all you can do.
all these little uh, new awarenesses or, once you become aware of something like that, you can't unknow it. So you have to do something about it, or it creates more stress. So all these little, I'll call them moments, do require courage. So,
Absolutely.
so when a client, a woman comes to you and you're sensing that this mindset or this block is, they have within them essentially, do you have a process, or like how do you start working with them and getting them to sort of move down the right path?
Yeah, I think that the most important work um, that so I'll back up and say that this is all work that I've done for myself as well. As a person who worked in nonprofit for a really long time, who led in nonprofit and experienced, those systems and those toxic workplaces. This is work that I've had to do and continue to do on myself.
Sure.
And the main thing, or the primary thing that I work with clients on, is learning again to trust themselves, to trust their intuition, trust their gut. It gets whittled down over time. After being in spaces where you feel not heard, where you feel undervalued. I just wanted to add that the work that I do with Black women and women of color is as a result of what I've been through in my lived experience. And one of the things that I had to come back to is learning to trust myself, learning to trust my gut, learning to trust my intuition. And so that is where I really like to sort of process with my clients, is learning to tap into that inner wisdom again and learning to trust it. So taking even small steps um, to build up. It's a muscle to
Yeah.
build up muscle of learning to trust yourself again, so that you can, you know, make those decisions that may go against what everybody else thinks you should be doing, or so that you can shed that cape
Yeah.
and feel okay with it, right? Because now you trust yourself and know that you're doing the right thing for yourself, for your family, for your community, all of your identities, right? Because you are building that muscle again of just trusting the knowing that's in you.
Yeah. No, it occurs to me, like I totally see that journey. And it occurs to me that, as we said, it does take courage to take the small step and look at the problem and acknowledge you need help and that. But where it takes big courage is actually taking action. Like we, in our head, still feels fairly safe. And then
Mhm.
it's when we have to do something about it. So do you find that a difficult, a difficult chasm to bridge?
Not and that's why I say it's about the even the small actions, right? And so I don't encourage my clients to go and jump out of a plane, right? Like we're not doing that, y'all. We're not ever doing that. I'm not ever going to do
No,
that.
me either.
But so it's not about, I don't try to get my clients in our first, 3 weeks together to leave their job, but like what is that one small thing? What is one small action that you can take that will validate your inner wisdom, validate your knowing, and build your trust in yourself? That could be having that conversation with a boss. That could be outlining the conversation that you need to have with a superior or with a colleague or with, a peer or one of your direct reports, right? Like just what is the small step? And then once you do that, now, assessing how did that feel for you? Right. And if it feels aligned and grounding and like the right thing and the next step, let's keep going. Let's do the next thing and the next thing until you start to really build that trust back up in yourself. And then you can make those big decisions. Then you can leave that job and know that for yourself, it's the right thing to do for you
Yeah.
in this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because sometimes those big, bold moves are too scary for them to even consider at first. And, I work with clients a lot about job transition. And a lot of times, once you get to the bottom of what the issue is, you might be able to fix it right where you are. And if not, you know what to look for in the new place. You know what to avoid in the new place.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. So true. Yeah, it just goes back to that, and that's where those taking those small steps can be even enlightening about what the right big step is,
yeah.
right? Good point.
One other interesting aspect of this is because so many of your clients are leading teams or leading organizations, they may be somewhere along their own courage journey, if we can call it that. And they're also leading people and bringing up a next generation behind us and all those important things, wanting to help them act on their courage and find their courage while they're still doing their own journeys. I mean, do you find that to be true?
I do. I do, Randy. And part of the courage too is realizing that you don't have to be responsible for all of that. That maybe the best thing you can do is lead by example, right? Is to set the personal boundaries for yourself, is to have the challenging and courageous conversations, right? Is to do those things. In a role that I had, where I was a program director, I was managing a team of like six facilitators, and they were all fairly new to work. Um, for many of them, this was like their first full-time role. And I just took on this huge responsibility of, I knew that this was not going to be their final workplace, right?
Sure.
And I just took on this responsibility of trying to to pour into them all that I could so that they would be ready for the next place, right? And I was sort of wearing their professional development and growth for my, like I was owning it, like I was wearing it as a coat, and it was exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can lose your own self in that.
Exactly, exactly. You certainly can. And so I had to come to the realization of, like, I think that the best way that I can um support, and I was still coaching them, but I just had to shed some of that stuff, because the best way that I could support them was to be an example, right? And to say, I can't wear your stuff. You have to do that. Some of this stuff you have to do on your own. I can't own it for you. And I think I think leading by example, even when I think about my own boys, right? I can't tell them all the things, but sometimes I can show them how to show up, how to lead, how to be in social spaces, and how to look people in their eye when you're talking to them. It's one thing to say, look them in the eye, but when they're looking at me, where am I looking? And so I think that leading by example is always the best way to go.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's so easy to see the examples as a parent. Because speaking for myself, I think I put more care and feeding into communication with my daughter than anywhere else in the world.
Mhm.
And and I think about that with discussions I have with my clients and things like that. But we do have to lead by example and be consistent, be who we want to be. Like I think kids force us to be better people in a
Mhm.
lot of ways if we're doing it purposefully. And then I don't know if our clients, if it's our clients benefit from that, or it's the thinking we do about our clients that lead us to be more purposeful otherwise. See, you're in a lucky position because you can still influence your kids. My daughter's grown and fully cooked. And she's great. She's great. But yeah, I would do some
And
things
still
differently.
learning stuff, I'm sure, from you,
Yeah.
because
Well,
even that.
I like to think it, but I think one of the most important things as a parent or as a coach or just as a person is that leading by example and being true to who you are and setting those boundaries in terms of this is not my problem to solve. And by solving it, you're not doing them any favors because you're taking away their voice and their ability to establish some resilience and things like that too.
Absolutely. And I think, even with my clients, I'm glad you brought up boundaries because that's what we talk about a lot is setting and maintaining those boundaries for yourself. And you know, that in and of itself is showing people how to move and show up as themselves in workplaces and in other spaces, right? Like setting the boundary that I do not check email or I do not respond to email after 6 and holding firm to that because that is my boundary, right? You can do whatever you want to do. You can now if you send me an email after 6, that's on you. My boundary is that it will not get a response until the next morning, right? And so setting those boundaries, you teach people how to treat you, right? And so setting boundaries is also number one, leading with courage. It takes courage to set and maintain for sure boundaries, right? And number two, it is showing others one way that they could also be a courageous leader.
I love what you're saying. And it occurs to me that sometimes it's about reframing things. Because take that example, which I have some powerful examples of that too, of setting boundaries on giving people their space in their personal life. Not in your case, no email responses after 6. So, in a way, yeah, it takes courage to do all the things we've talked about, but it also takes courage not to do the thing
Mm,
and or to not do the thing. And where the reframe comes in, I think, is in that case, it's not that you weren't responding, it's that you were actively not responding. So this was a purposeful choice you made to not do something, which I do think takes courage. And it also takes communication. People have to know why you're doing what you're doing in order to truly lead and in order for them to not feel abandoned.
yep. Yeah, you have to be, they say clarity is kind. You have to be clear about where you are with those things. And so even when I am setting contracts and agreements with my clients, I have in there, this is my communication policy. Like this is, and it's not to, I love, what you're not doing, right? And being intentional in that reframing because it's not necessarily that I won't respond to myself. Right? I see your email and I am probably putting together
Processing. Yeah.
processing and putting together my response, but you will not get a response from
Yeah.
me until tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
right? And so, that is and people will say that there's another boundary that might should be made, but you have to make that boundary for yourself. Like some people will say, well, you're still working. And maybe I am, but that's not, you have to determine what boundary you need to set for yourself
Yeah.
and for how you want to show up in all of your many
Yeah.
spaces.
Final question that I have for you is what internal narratives or self-definitions do you see shifting as people begin to develop this courage muscle? I love the way you described that.
hmm Yeah, again, I think, it goes back to trusting yourself and being able to make decisions for yourself and rest in that, right? Like not second guessing, just making those decisions that feel grounded and aligned. And I think with that the more you build that, the more that you build that courage muscle, then you can, and this is where it gets really fun, is that you can start to disrupt. Right now, you're starting to build courage to disrupt, to do things differently than they've been done. And so I have a private podcast called Flip the Script, and it is all about helping leaders to write their own rule book, right? To like play a different way, play a different game, to write their own instructions. Like, because in nonprofit, there are a lot of quote unquote best practices and ways of doing things in philanthropy. And a lot of times, those practices And those systems were not built for all communities or with all communities in mind. And so once you start to build that courage, then you can start to take the next step of like, yeah, this doesn't really work for me and my community. We're going to try this way, right? You can
Yeah.
start experimenting with things and testing things. And not using have you heard the story of the ham, where the ham is, they cut the ends off of the ham and it was
No.
down generation to generation. And then finally somebody, many, many, many generations down said, well, why do we cut off the ends of the ham? Why don't we just use them? And it turns out that the great, great, great grandmother cut off the ends of the ham so it would fit in her pan. But like then you can start to challenge things like, why are we cutting off the end? Those are good pieces of ham. Why are we cutting off the ends of the ham,
Yeah. Is
right?
there another way to solve this problem?
Another way to do this that feels aligned, that feels grounded and rooted in who we are, rooted in our community, right? You can, and then that's when you're showing up authentically, right? That's when authenticity really starts to show up in your leadership.
Yeah.
But it all starts with taking those small steps to build the courage.
Oh, that's so interesting. And that ham analogy is it seems light, but it's not. There's something there about figuring out different ways to solve the problem. I'm big on that. Make sure we're solving the right thing.
One thing I cannot stand to hear is this is the way we've always done it. Ugh,
Right.
over it already.
Right. Yeah. Oh, the way you've always done it, you mean before you had email and computers? Okay.
Right. And I don't I roll my eyes and I don't want to like I don't want it to come off as if because I also believe deeply in ancestral wisdom and things like that, but I don't think that we should just take things as is because that's just the way we've always done it. I think that we take in that wisdom, right, as part of our solution making, our sense making, right? And then we determine from there what's best for us.
Yeah. It's such good stuff, Julia. I really appreciate everything you shared. I mean, if I look through, there's so many nuggets of wisdom, but one of the things that comes to me is it all, to a great extent, wraps up in the courage starts by asking for help and asking the questions and being willing to challenge the status quo the way it's always been done and having the courage to then be true to who you are, be consistent, lead by example. You know, many times what I find is the answer, we have the answers, we just have to, they're within. We just have to be willing to look at them and find them.
Huh. You have to be, and like for some people, that's easier than others. Some people have to mine into, right? Like you have to go back and really remember who you are,
Yeah,
your core, before you can even get to that inner wisdom, right? Like, and so that's why I say it's those small steps in building the trust in yourself back.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
great. Julia, for any of our listeners who want to follow you or want to know more about you, where can they find you?
Awesome. Thank you for asking this question, Randy. I am on LinkedIn as Jolea Payne, Payne. And I am also on Instagram at In Spirit for Change. And my website is www.inspiritconsulting.com.
Great. I'll make sure all of those are in the link notes, in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you so much for making the time for me and joining me today. Our conversation was every bit as wonderful as I knew it would be. I'm really grateful.
Yes, no, thank you. I again am honored by the invitation just to have this conversation with you, the Randy Robert.
I might edit that part out, but I appreciate it.
No, but I hold you in high esteem and high regard, Randy. Just I appreciate how you show up, and I appreciate the work that you do. So thank you for the invitation to be in conversation with you.
Thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me. Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.